Greetings, everyone. Let me make sure we are actually, yes, rolling tape. My name is Joseph Mass. The individual you see in your frame is Zach Hing. And in just a moment, we're going to listen to an excerpt from this video. It's titled White Privilege from an Asian Perspective. I came across this video a few, maybe a week or so ago. And basically, this individual is sharing information from the standpoint of why does Asians not complain about white privilege. And basically, he is sharing um, information, um, this concept called the model minority. And folks, we're going to learn a little bit about the model minority. It goes all the way back to World War II and maybe even before then. But I'm gonna point out some things now. I'm just coming off of memory. I wanted to do this video. I don't have all of the. Again, this is going to be one. This is going to be sort of an intro video to several that's going to follow. Um, but I'm going to share some of this information. This model minority is basically an attack on the black community. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, the history of it. But this individual, the concept is model minority is if Asians can come over to America, suffer some of the same indignities, uh, somewhat of the black community, and they can succeed, then why can't African Americans? And basically, because we are like, well, let's play it, and we're gonna hear uh, his position on this.
And in fact, for a lot of minorities out there, there are already affirmative action plans in place that help you get jobs and help you get into college. So the fact that we are still whining about the concept of white privilege to me is honestly sickening. Because it's not, number one, based on any facts, and number two, it's just victim mentality at the end of the day, which for a lot of you viewers who have been watching my videos for some time now already know my stance on it. Okay, I am tired of the victim mentality, and I am tired of people blaming white people for all of their problems. Yeah, white people have done a lot of, have been responsible for discrimination against minorities historically. But in these days, ever since the 60s, after the Civil Rights Act, after the Equal Pay Act, after equal employment, and, all of these opportunities came about for everybody, it's no longer a problem. When we think about affluence in America.
Let me stop just for a moment. Now, he said after the 60s and some other things that occurred, poof, everything just disappeared. Like, uh, all of the uh, racism, uh, the people died because of racism. People were lynched, killed, and just poof, all of those feelings, all of that attitude just went away because of some legislation. How absolutely ignorant can you be? But let's listen to some more of this.
This is something that has been brought up by a lot of political commentators and a lot of personalities on the internet. People have written about it in the Huffington Post. It is not something that is a well-kept secret. I mean, hell, you could Wikipedia this and find this out.
No, he says you can Wikipedia this. It's interesting how, because you can also Wikipedia the phrase model minority. Now, you hadn't heard him say it yet. I don't think he said it in this clip, but I'm pretty certain he mentions that phrase. And see, that's something that could be easily Wikipedia'd as well, and find out that that phrase, the model minority in the Asian community, was actually selected, folks, for a specific purpose, and we're gonna pawns, if you will. So the Asian community didn't just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, as he's going to assert here in just a moment. That's what he would like to believe. But there's even those in that. We're going to listen to some other clips in this video, even in his own community, that have knowledge and understanding. as I call him, he's a Candace clone, and all those have you listen to him is like the same talking points. But I'm gonna point out some other things. But let him finish.
Asians are among the most affluent households by race per capita in the United States. That is no surprise to some people, and that's the reason why we don't complain about white privilege. Why are we the most affluent race? Guess what? It comes down to simple choices
Here he
in
come.
economics that determine the possibility of a good and fulfilling and well-paying career over time.
Well done. That's pure brainwashing, folks. And we're gonna find that what he just said, is I mean it's almost verbatim, and it's straight out of the '60s. He's gonna talk about some don't look back and uh, you got the victim mentality because you keep looking back, and he's too ignorant to realize that what he just said it comes from the '60s. That he's using talking points that come straight out of the '60s. So while he's telling other people don't look back, his very script is from back there, the '60s. Let's listen further.
I talk about it in terms of education. This is where our stereotype comes into the mix. We study hard, we work hard, we go to good schools, and despite affirmative action plans that have been put into place to keep us or to make the barrier to end.
Now let me say something real quick too. Now I'm not saying that the Asian community doesn't work hard and don't study and so forth. I am saying clearly, and I'll defend it with research, that Asian community didn't pull themselves up just by their own bootstraps. With all that study, with all that education, that's beautiful what they've done and keep doing it. But we're going to learn a little bit of the history of this model minority, where it came from, why Asians was, if I could say it this way, allowed to flourish. Now they did the work. They studied, they're earning today, and that's a beautiful thing. But they had help that he either is brainwashed not to acknowledge or see, or he's just ignorant. But let's listen.
Entry more difficult for Asians, we still get into these schools, we still get good jobs, and we still work hard and hold those jobs. Asians have the most, we're the highest demographic of master's degrees holders and graduate degrees, although I don't necessarily think that advanced and postgraduate education is necessarily key to a successful career. It has something to say with affluence when it comes to economics in this country.
Okay. I think we may have had enough. I think we have enough to go forward. Now, let me again. He's very naive, blind, brainwashed, whatever you want to say. Now, again, I'm not saying that Asians don't study. I'm not saying that they don't focus and do things. But the idea that, as he suggested in the '60s, because of some legislation, everything just poof, white privilege disappeared, and everything just became rosy America with no issues, no problems, nothing. Now, never mind the prison industrial complex and how that's been leveraged. Statistics, folks, I'm gonna do videos, a series of videos that's gonna deal with these issues. Uh, uh, but let me say something quickly. The reason why, two critical reasons why the Asian community flourished the way that they did, is because, number one, America changed its focus on the Asian community, and I want to show you. Let me share this. Now, back in the 1800s, as I understand it, legislation was passed that blocked Chinese immigrants from coming into the United States. Uh, in World War II, America needed China as an ally. And so they rescinded that legislation, and they began to allow immigrants in because they felt it would look bad and would hurt their relationship with China that they needed in the war. If here's this nation that needs China and their allies, but they have legislation on the books that's blocking their people from coming to the country. So at that point, not only did they rescind that legislation, but they launched a campaign to start favoring Asian Americans in America. Uh, there's a video that I'm going to show an excerpt from, but I would encourage you to go and listen when I'll highlight the video when I bring it up and give the name. Go and listen to that entire history, uh, and where this phrase came from and what it was used for. Well, also, so that began to change the attitude of America towards Asians, because they needed that relationship with China, and it changed the attitude towards Asians in America. They begin to look at them in favorable light on the media, in culture, and so that was one of the aspects. Another aspect that occurred associated with this model minority is in the 60s. They used this phrase model minority to attempt to undercut the civil rights movement. They used that phrase uh, to send this false notion to the world that, look, things aren't as bad as the civil rights leaders are making it out to be. If the Asians can survive and make it, how come African Americans can't? That's because the powers that be propped the Asians up and gave them opportunities and took many of the hurdles out from in front of them that still remain in front of the African American community. I'm going to show two quick videos to that that's going to speak to this situation. But let me also say this. Another reason, not only was Asians aided by this nation to excel, but the civil rights movement also helped their cause. Now watch this. I'm going to show you this. Listen to this video.
That we need to do something to change that.
I remember when during the civil rights era, when Martin Luther King was on the news on TV, my father had said to me that guy Martin Luther King is going to help Chinese. I didn't quite understand what that meant.
For us to kind of see people protesting and demanding rights that they felt they were being denied justice was revelation. And it was like defying authority, which was really against Confucianism and what you were raised with as a child.
We were affected by the African American civil rights movement in a positive way, that we are the beneficiary of it, because we learned that, oh, okay, people could march and demonstrate, but there were actually a lot of students already active in campus.
It was somewhat euphoric for college students. At that time, we were considered radicals because we were.
I'm going to stop right there. I'm about to run out of time. I want to keep this video kind of short. But you can see there Asian Americans showing their appreciation to the civil rights movement and how it inspired them. Folks, I could talk on this video, but I won't get to take too much time. Right on the heels of the civil rights movement, let me do this real quick. Right on the heels of the civil rights movement came the Asian American movement. And Asian Americans were inspired greatly by the civil rights movement. I'm trying to find a particular picture that's going to give you how Asian Americans mobilized and began to march. And much of there it is. Let me see if I can find it. They began to march, and folks, matter of fact, the Black Panthers played a major part in preparing these Asian leaders for the Asian American movement. The Red Guard was almost the Asian carbon copy of the Black Panthers. There was actually an Asian member. There was a Black Panther, an Asian gentleman that was a Black Panther, and he went on to help form the AAPA party organization, the Asian American Political, and I can't think of that last A, but they went on to become a major force in the Asian American movement that lasted all the way into the mid to late 70s. But that looks like the civil rights movement. But these individuals were motivated and charged and inspired. Now, Again, these are many of the reasons, or one of the reasons why the Asian community reached the level that they reached. They were used by this nation, you see, propped up to try to undercut the civil rights movement. But then Asians got inspired by that movement. Those who understood that, wait a minute, you can prop us up all you want and say we're the model community, but we got issues. And they took to the streets, inspired by the civil rights movement, and began to fight for their rights. Let me show this last video and listen to this, folks.
By the 1960s, the model minority myth took a darker turn. As Ellen Wu has documented, Asian American stereotypes began to be used against African American demands for social and economic justice. Stories of Asian success influenced the controversial Moynihan Report, which blamed black poverty on ghetto culture. In some newspapers,
folks, that's the same talking points we just heard Zach use. Those talking points are, what is it, over 50 some odd years old, and he's talking about come out of the past. See, the blindness and the ignorance of, and you just, let's finish this.
Opinion columnists unfairly asked if Asians could do it, why couldn't African Americans?
Unfairly asked if Asians could. This is 1960, folks. The same talking points. He needs to come out of the past.
The Asian model minority stereotype still survives today. Only now, it's become something of a straitjacket for the community.
When I talk to non-Asian Americans, they say, well, the model minority stereotype, that's not a bad thing, right? It's really a compliment. You guys are such high achievers. Where I see it as a problem and as a negative is when this stereotype is really detrimental and really prohibitive from getting Asian Americans getting help, whether it's mental health care or getting involved in the political, activist arena that they really want to. If I'm...
See, these Candace clowns that's in, well, actually Candace clones, sorry, in the Asian community are hurting their own community. And Candace clones are hurting the black community with this foolishness. Folks, when this come out of the past, and they're in the past, come out of the past, but when they say that, I liken that to when a thief goes into a house. They've gotten a lot smarter. You see in some of the movies, a thief go in the house and then he wipes down the fingerprints on the way out so that there's no tracks or traces left. Well, it's the same thing. Don't look back. Why? Because if you look back, you'll see the traces. You'll see the fingerprints. You'll see the evidence of what happened and why situations are such as they are. White privilege still exists. I'm going to do a video on that. Another video. This individual is deceived. Let me share this response. I responded to his video, and I got into a debate. Another gentleman saw another person. I don't know if we loosely call him a gentleman, but I got into a debate with a person known as Hidden Thoughts 3, and there are several claims that he made. I'm gonna use these series of videos not only to address more claims that were made by Zach Hing, but I'm going to address claims that were made by Hidden Thoughts 3 concerning this. Because what I said was, after hearing him attack the black community and understanding, I made the statement, okay, while we were out in the streets facing dogs, water hoses, jail, even death, where was the Asian community? Now, folks, I'm going to answer that, and I welcome anyone to weigh in. And Hidden Thoughts had some claims that he wanted to make. I'm going to address his claims and why I don't agree with them. But I think we got one indication as to why Asians were not at many of the marches, because at the same time those marches were going on, America was using them as a prop to say, look, this is the model minority. If they could make it, see, they caught, and I'm not blaming the Asians, they were caught right in the middle of a ploy to try to undermine the civil rights movement. We saw, we just heard that. Let me see, that video, you can go and check it out on the Washington Post website. It's the myth of the model minority, and all those and their age and sharing their experience. So I'm gonna shut this down, but in the videos to come, I'm gonna deal with Hidden Thoughts 3, and that debate is actually written out on the website where Zach was. That his video is in the comment section. The debate that I had, I didn't answer all of the claims, and that's why I'm gonna take these videos and answer the claims, because I want to use these videos and send them out to educate. But that's all the time I'm gonna take. I went way too long even now, but God bless.